Britney Spears is back in the news, and this used to be somebody that used to get my heart a little bit of flutter back in the 5th grade days, and so ordinarily we don't talk about Britney Spears on this channel, but she's in the middle of this battle with her father-in-law over her assets. She's in the middle of this conservatorship, which is basically keeping her hostage to all of the money that she's earned from all of her performance, all of her work, all of her music, all of the things that she's done. It's still sort of subject to her father's whim. This story comes over from thefederalist.com. Representatives now, Jordan and Matt Gaetz, they endorse the Free Britney movement, and they are asking that this all be heard in front of the House Judiciary Committee. Today, a pair of House Republicans and the Judiciary Committee are demanding that Chairman Jerry Nadler of New York hold hearings on unlawful conservatorships, which we're going to talk about, after celebrity pop star Britney Spears has remained trapped in an arrangement for more than a decade. A conservatorship is a legal arrangement preserved for those who suffer debilitating conditions, which include severe mental illness or old age. A judge may grant full control of one's daily life, living arrangements, health decisions, and finances to an appointed conservator if the court deems it necessary. In the 13 years since being placed under a conservatorship reserved for those incapacitated, the pop star singer net worth is about $60 million. She's released 4 albums, went on 3 world tours, completed 4-year residency in Las Vegas, starred as a host on The X Factor, made a cameo appearance on Glee, How I Met Your Mother, all that stuff. However, she has made clear her objections to the legal prison restraining her under her father's lucrative command and has stopped performing while in his custody. She has fought the conservatorship in court, which has become the subject of a recent New York Times documentary released in February chronicling the fan-based movement Free Britney to liberate the princess of pop. Here's an image of her holding some sort of award from Fox saying that the Free Britney movement gains momentum. Good for Britney. All right, so this is posted over here from the House Judiciary GOP. So the Judiciary Committee is a pretty important committee in both the House and the Senate. And now we have Representatives Jim Jordan and Representative Matt Gaetz are demanding that Representative Jerry Nadler hold a hearing on court-ordered conservatorships, saying that, quote, the most striking example is perhaps the case of the multi-platinum performing artist Britney Spears. This is the letter that they drafted over there. You can see this was filed a couple days ago, March 8th, being sent over to the chairman, Jerry Nadler. It says the House Committee on the Judiciary is charged with safeguarding the rights afforded to Americans by the U.S. Constitution. These rights include having the free will to guide one's own affairs and legal autonomy over one's own finances. When situations suggest the unjust deprivation of those rights by the government, we have an obligation to conduct oversight and explore potential remedies. And I'm on board with that. Anytime that I think stuff like that is happening, we do as a society need to revisit it. In recent years, there has been a growing public concern about the use of conservatorships to effectively deprive individuals of personal freedoms at the behest of others through the manipulation of the courts. And they reference this article down here. It says it's the U.S. Government Accountability Office, which did a report on guardianships. A project funded by the U.S. Department of Justice to examine the conservator exploitation found that, quote, financial exploitation by conservators often goes unchecked by the courts, and there is a dire need for guardianship conservatorship reform, referencing another article from the National Center for State Courts. Moreover, the ACLU recently voiced that conservatorships should be viewed with skepticism and used as a last resort, but in most cases, it's done routinely and without substantive engagement. ACLU is also concerned that individuals are being, quote, stripped of virtually all their civil rights through guardianships and conservatorships. That's a big problem. Has called for the exploration of reforms to ensure that unnecessary conservatorships can be terminated so these individuals may direct their own lives. The most striking example is Britney Spears. Since 2008, Ms. Spears has been under a court-ordered conservatorship. The facts and circumstances giving rise to this arrangement remain in dispute, but involve questionable motives and legal tactics by her father and now conservator, Jamie Spears. Let's see if we have a footnote for that one. All right, so in court appearances in August and November, Ms. Spears' attorney represented to the court that Ms. Spears strongly opposed having her father as the conservator, that she was afraid of her father, that she would not again perform publicly so long as this arrangement persisted. Despite these pleas, Mr. Spears remains a conservator of her estate. Despite Ms. Spears claiming to want nothing more than to see despite Mr. Spears Despite dad claiming he wants nothing more to see daughter not need a conservatorship, his attorney admitted in a recent documentary, of the cases I've been involved in, I've not seen a conservatee who has successfully terminated a conservatorship. So they do not want her to get out of it. Miss Spears is not alone. There are countless other Americans unjustly stripped of their freedoms by others with little recourse. For example, Long Island resident Daniel Gross was forced against his will into a conservatorship after being hospitalized with cellulitis while visiting his daughter in Connecticut. And what the judge labeled as a terrible miscarriage of justice, Mr. Gross was locked in a Connecticut nursing home for 10 months despite his pleas for release. Given the constitutional freedoms at stake and the opaqueness of these arrangements, it is incumbent upon our committee to convene a hearing to examine whether Americans are trapped unjustly in conservatorships. This comes from Jim Jordan, ranking member, and Matt Gaetz, member of Congress. So this is a new issue for me. I didn't even know this was a thing. I didn't even know that that Britney Spears was going through this trouble. Otherwise, I would have been just pounding the table about this a long time ago. About Britney. So it's one of those things that is very interesting. I don't know much about conservatorships. I don't practice in this area of law. But when I was thinking about this analogy, I was hearkening back to my days in property law, where we talk about this concept that you do not want the dead hand of the law, or the old hand sort of reaching up from the grave and interfering with your meddling. We talk about this a lot in trusts and estates, that you don't want you don't want your great grandmother to be able to dictate what you do with your life. In other words, they're only going to give you $1 million of your inheritance if you become a doctor. Right, because then you have to grow up and become a doctor. And so the courts have long said that they're going to sort of prohibit people, or prohibit those types of arrangements that allow that dead hand from the grave to come up and control your life well into the future. Sort of a principle of old property law, estates and trusts and all that stuff. And so this sort of mirrors that in my mind, right? Now we have Mr. Spears, the father, who is somebody who I think you can make an argument that during Britney Spears, her early days, may have been instrumental in helping to keep the train on the tracks, right? She's young. We all know that, Britney was in a little bit of a rocky road there for a little bit of time, right? She shaved her head. She got married. She got that marriage annulled. And so things were a little bit up and down. But now she's an older woman, and presumably she's gotten the help and the resources and the ability to manage her own affairs. Father's not letting it happen. And because this conservatorship was set up when she was much younger, and it's basically bulletproof, maybe there should be something done about that. And I didn't know that this was a problem that was sort of elsewhere around the country. And so I learned something when I was going through this story. My original thought was, why are we talking about Britney Spears here? But I'm okay with it. I think Britney deserves justice just like everybody else. So hopefully we see some momentum on that. We have one question over from locals.com from News Now Wyoming. Says, it does seem off that mistakes she made in her early 20s before she was even a mother would still give her father full control of her life for so long. A temporary thing during the crisis. Remembering what she was going through, I would understand, but she turned her life around. That's exactly right. And I think that people should be afforded that opportunity. And it's a grotesque tragedy that Britney Spears is no longer performing as a result of this conservatorship. So hopefully she gets out of it. Hopefully the judge sees what's going on. Hopefully these hearings produce something. And remember, this is what Congress is supposed to do, right? They're supposed to hold hearings and investigate these types of claims to see whether or not it justifies legislation that they should pass through the House of Representatives. And so we'll see what Jerry Nadler does. Of course, he runs the Senate Judiciary Committee, and we'll see whether or not any hearings actually get scheduled. So that's it for Britney Spears. Good luck, Britney. #free Britney. All right.